I'm the bad guy. I'ma stare him in the eye like, what's up?
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to an early day 13 of My Story, My Strength, a challenge I created for myself, for my healing, and for any survivors who needs to know that even when you feel like you're breaking down, you can still build something from your pain. You can build something powerful from your pain. This isn't just a space that's polished and pretty and pristine. It's real, it's raw, and it's mine. If you've ever questioned whether your healing was even possible, was it possible for someone like you? I want you to know, yes, yes, it is. Even if you've been silenced, abandoned, or betrayed. Sorry, I'm still getting over this cold, you guys. You are not alone here. Okay, you're not alone here. But as always, I have to give you guys a trigger warning because today's story includes gun violence, childhood trauma, and aggressive mistreatment by law enforcement and EMTs. Please care for yourself as you listen, pause, breathe, or step away if needed. Your safety definitely matters, okay? So, again, today I want to talk about something that I've held on to for a long time. Even to this day, I still have my moments where I feel bad. It's something that affected someone I love, and I've always been grateful that I was forgiven for it. I was only around 14 years old when this happened. It was when I started to run away from home, when things started to get really bad, drinking got bad, but I was still kind of bouncing back and forth. And I couldn't stand being in that house. I just couldn't stand being in that house. Dealing with the abuse, the addiction, the chaos, it was just really too much for me. But this was one of the times that I was actually home. And a friend of the family, she was like a sister, like a baby sister to me. She was over visiting. She normally used to, because at first she would come over to see my younger sister, but me and her, we kind of vibed more. So she started to kind of transition, and me and her would hang out more. So she came to my room and we hung out. I don't even remember where my older sister was because we shared a room. So I don't know where she was. I know she wasn't there that day. And it was just kind of me and the girl that I'm discussing. Because my younger sister, I believe she may have been in her room. I don't remember the specific details. Of course, I was only 14 years old, but I do remember that I got a call. It was there was a party, and the party was in the projects. Of course, we all know the projects are not necessarily a place where anyone should be after a certain time of night, especially a 12 and 14-year-old, because she was about 1 or 2 years younger than me. So I'm going to say she was about 12 or 13 years old. And I was like, okay, I normally would have gone because this was around the time I also had joined a gang because I was in the streets and I needed to feel safe. And that was the way I felt safe at that time. But because I knew she was with me, I kind of, wanted to take it safe because I was known for fighting. I had a reputation as a hitter in the gang, because I defended myself, and I didn't want to go. I didn't want to bring her into that, but she wanted to go. She wanted to go so bad. She was really asking me, please, let's go, please, can we go? And I'm just like, no. And finally, I was like, okay, we can go. We're not gonna stay long. And if anything starts looking bad, if anything starts looking weird or funny, we're out of there. And she agreed. So we left and we agreed. I'm like, you better not tell your mom, because if my mom finds out, I'm going to get it, because my mom and her mom were longtime friends. They've been knowing each other since, God, I don't even know how long. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody was okay. So no talking, no talking to anybody, no moving suspicious, no slipping. We had to make sure that we went, we had fun, and we just would dip out after we had a little bit of fun. So we walked to the party, and surprisingly, nothing happened. It was actually a good time. We were able to chill. There was no drama, no fights, just music, people laughing. Of course, there was drinking, and people were smoking a little reefer at the time. And, we were having fun, and it was a sense of peace. And then when it was time to leave, we kind of joined a group of other individuals that was there that knew us from school. Because again, it was in the projects. Not everyone there was an adult. There were a lot that were all in the same age group as us. And we were walking back home. Now, the street that we took to go home was known for it to be violence, drugs, and prostitution there. So we knew better. I knew better. But we were in a big enough group, not too huge to draw attention, but small, big enough for us to feel like, okay, I felt like we would be safe and that we would be okay. But that's not happening, because when we were halfway down the street, I heard someone call my name. They were in a car, they drove up next to us. And I saw this barrel pointing at me before I even saw the face. Then bang. Yes, they were shooting at me. This is why I blame myself. Because they specifically sought me out and they shot at me. But before the bullets could hit me, a guy knocked me down on the ground, saving my life. So I was like, okay. So I just knew to stay down until the gunshots went away. They drove off. I thought everything was okay. But then I heard her calling my name and telling me she'd been shot, screaming for me to come because she'd been shot. She was screaming so loud. I was like, oh my God. I jumped up and ran to her. She'd been shot in the leg and there was blood everywhere. The bullet tore through her calf muscle, like her lower calf is where she was shot, and it just tore through and ripped off all the skin that was around there. So I took off my shirt. I've always had like 2 or 3 shirts. I wore layers. So I took off like 1 or 2 of my shirts, and I would wrap my shirt around her leg, but the bleeding wouldn't stop. So I took off my socks, and I'm just tying them around, just trying to do everything I could to stop the bleeding. And at that time, somebody had to have called 911 because the police came. They came before the ambulance. But instead of helping, they made everything worse. I'm trying to explain to them what happened, but they got really aggressive with me. They got in my face. They told me to sit down and shut up. They threatened to mace me if I didn't sit down. And I'm covered in blood. And they're asking me questions, and I'm trying to answer their questions. And instead of them treating me like a child, because I'm telling them, like, I'm only 14. This is my sister. We came out. We snuck out of the house. And they're treating me like I'm a suspect. Like I'm the one that shot her. Like I planned this. Like, why would I stay? Even at 14, I'm smart enough to know if I shoot someone, I'm not going to stay around and wait for them to come and arrest me. So they're like being really mean and aggressive. I'm trying to stop the bleeding. They're telling me not to move, don't touch her. Sometimes they're getting to the point where they're slamming me. And I'm just like, what the hell? So the ambulance finally show up. And the EMTs load her up onto the gurney. They wrap her up with something better than my shirt. And they kind of just throw my shirt at me. And by now, I'm like with 1 or 2 people, because most of the people in the group, they kind of scattered when, the gunshots came and then the police showed up. They even more scattered. And I begged them, like, please let me ride with her. This is my little sister. She's only 12 or 13 years old. And she's screaming for me. She's screaming for me to come with her. And they're telling me no. Not just no, but they threatened to arrest me again, and they threatened to mace me. Even when I said, well, she's my sister, they didn't care. They slammed me back down on the ground, and they didn't see a scared child. They saw a gang member, a threat. I told them again, I'm only 14. I snuck out of my house. I just want to, I want to make sure that my sister's okay, and nothing mattered. They wouldn't tell me where she was. They wouldn't tell me what hospital they were taking her to. So I had to walk home covered in blood. I'm walking home, and I had to wake up my mom, terrified that she was going to beat the hell out of me because, at this time, I'm being beat. For the first time that I can remember, she was actually concerned. She woke up, seeing me covered in blood. She's shocked. She's sober by now, because she had been asleep overnight. And she's checking on me, touching me, making sure I'm okay. And I'm letting her know, no, I'm okay. And I had to explain to her what happened. So she calls her friend, and she checks on my sister, and she checks on the mom. And my sister, she survived. The bullet caused some tissue damage, but it didn't take her life, and she made a full recovery. And I gave a full statement to the police, and I told them what I saw. And I made sure they knew who did it, because I needed to make sure that I did right by her. I need to make sure that I didn't, they have this saying, snitches get stitches, and whatever, but she survived. And I didn't want them to think that, I was going to make sure that they knew who did this to her. Because first they were shooting at me. They were shooting at me. So I'm like, no. But the part that stays with me the most is the police. The police, that part stays with me the most. The hate in their eyes, the way they treated me like I was an animal. They slammed me down right in front of her, and she was screaming for me, but they didn't care. They didn't care. They didn't even tell me where they were taking her again. They just say, "You better sit your ass down. Sit your ass down." Like, I'm just sitting here like I am 14, and she's only 12 or 13, and she had to watch me get brutalized right after she got shot. And that wasn't the first time I witnessed violence, and it wasn't the last. It definitely wasn't the last, but it was one of the moments that changed me forever because I was really, really, really mistreated as a child by those who were supposed to try to. They didn't even offer me a ride home. Okay, they're like, walk. So, how that made me feel that night shattered something inside of me. I was only 14. I was just a child, and instead of being treated like a scared kid, who had just watched someone I love get shot, I was treated like a criminal, like a threat, like an animal. The people who were supposed to protect and care for us, the police and the EMTs, became a new source of trauma for me. I was thrown on the ground, I was yelled at, threatened, and I was denied a chance to ride with her to the hospital or even get a ride home. I wasn't comforted. I was criminalized. And because of that, I internalized some heavy, heartbreaking beliefs. One of those beliefs was that no one sees me as a child. I'm seen as dangerous just for existing. Just for existing, I'm not even seen as a child. I can't trust anyone that helps. It only comes with pain. I can't trust help. Because, that wasn't the first time the police came out. I couldn't trust anyone. Anyone who was meant to help me, I realized I couldn't trust them because it only came with pain. That my fear didn't matter because I wasn't showing aggression. I was showing fear. I was crying too. And that didn't matter to them. And even when I try to do the right thing, I'm treated like I did something wrong. I stayed there. I waited for them. I didn't leave her. I wouldn't have left her. I would never have left her. And I tried to make sure that they took care of her. But instead, they treated me like I did something wrong. And I also thought I had to protect everyone. But no one would protect me because at that time in my life, I had to fight. I was defending people. I had to fight for my sister. I had to fight for whoever, for myself. But no one was willing to protect me. These thoughts, they left scars that sometimes still bleed because I still have issues trusting the police. Seriously. The pain wasn't just physical that night. It was the feeling of being discarded, dehumanized, and left to navigate that trauma alone. So I have a reflection question for all of you, okay? Have you ever been in a moment of crisis only to have the people who were supposed to help you become another source of harm? So have you ever been in a moment of crisis only to have the people who were supposed to help you, whether it was an official, whether it was a person in your home, no matter who it was, have you ever been in a moment of crisis and only to have the people who were supposed to help you become another source of harm? How did that change you? And how did it change the way you see safety, trust, and authority? Okay? How did that change the way you see safety, trust, or authority? Because that changed me so much. So much. I'm still having a trust issue with authority. So my negative mindset is I can't trust anyone to help me. When I need support the most, I'm on my own. And that is really, 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 really something that I have believed for so long. And I still have issues with that. If you haven't noticed yesterday, my share yesterday, I spoke about asking family for help and being left in the dark, So I do have an issue with no one will help me. But how I reframed that mindset was, that mindset was born in survival. I remind myself that mindset was born in survival. But survival isn't the same as healing. So I have to reframe that and recognize where that came from. And that's not the same as healing. So today, I invite you to explore the idea that you deserve safety. You deserved safety then, and you still deserve safety now. Just because certain systems failed you doesn't mean every source will support you. So, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. Just because certain systems failed you doesn't mean every support service will. So just because something, this one area failed you, doesn't mean everything in that area will fail you. Just because that those officers were cruel doesn't mean that all of the officers that I encounter will be cruel. I mean, I don't have a lot of good, you know, stories about the police, but I don't have all bad ones either. I did have some good ones. So just because that system failed me doesn't mean that every source of support will fail me. Rebuilding the trust that you have. It starts with giving yourself permission to be seen, heard, and held by people who can show up safely. Okay. And the affirmation that I have for myself was my fear was never weakness. It was wisdom. I now surround myself with people who protect, not punish my vulnerability. I surround myself with people who will not punish, but protect my vulnerability. I know I said it in two different ways. I want to make sure everyone understands. We have to surround ourselves with people who's going to embrace our vulnerability and protect that, so that we will feel safe and know that we deserve safety. So my coping tool for you guys is going to be called a safety anchor technique. This is especially helpful for those whose trauma stems from unsafe authority figures or betrayals in crisis. Okay? Choose a symbol of safety. It could be a word, an image, a small object that you keep with you, like a stone, a bracelet, or a picture of someone who makes you feel safe. Every time you feel triggered by memories of betrayal or mistreatment, hold or visualize that anchor. Okay? And then say aloud or silently, I am not that moment anymore. I'm not in that moment anymore. I survived. I am safe now. Then name 3 things that make you feel safe today. It could be a boundary you set. It could be someone in your corner, or a decision that you made to heal. This doesn't erase the trauma at all, but it rewires your nervous system to find new reference points for protection and safety. Okay, so it's never going to get rid of the trauma, but it'll give you something else to focus on besides that trauma, so that you can learn how to deal with and manage those flashbacks and the trauma that it caused you. So you guys ready for that empowerment challenge? It's a 1-minute empowerment challenge, you guys. Reclaim your voice in public power spaces, okay? Today, I want you to write and send a short message, an email, a DM or a comment, etc., something. Write a short message to a public official, a police department, community leader, or a healing organization. Share one thing that you wish someone had done differently when you were vulnerable. You don't have to go into any details. Just name the harm and demand change. Why? Because reclaiming power includes speaking back to the system that tried to silence you. You are no longer that scared child, okay? You are no longer that scared child. So where are we at now? We are on our survivor spotlight. This is going to be a long one, you guys, because this is something I feel is very powerful. So just be ready. It's about a gentleman named John Lewis, who was born in 1940 in Troy, Alabama. And he was born into a world built to break him. As the son of sharecroppers in the heart of the Jim Crow South, his earliest memories were shaped by racial segregation, poverty, and the suffocating silence of injustice. He lived in a region where Black children were forbidden from checking out public books from public libraries, and where Black bodies could be brutalized without consequence, and where the law was often the very thing that was weaponized against their existence. From a young age, Lewis was deeply affected by the hypocrisy of the American dream that preached liberty and justice for all, but practiced violence and exclusion by degradation. I know how to say that word, degradation. I'm learning these big giant words. I know the meaning. Words just not going to come out of my mouth. Degradation for people who look like him. So basically the belittling or the dehumanizing people who look like him. He was taunted, spit on, called racial slurs, and physically assaulted by white peers and police alike. But instead of allowing that trauma to consume him, John Lewis began to see the power of defiance wrapped in the indignity. He was inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and became a key organizer in the civil rights movement. By age 23, he was one of the original 13 freedom riders, riding buses into the Deep South. He faced beatings that broke his bones and imprisonment that attempted to break his spirit, but he never stopped. As chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the SNCC, Lewis led sit-ins, marches, and voter registration drives, often while bleeding, limping, or freshly released from jail. The most infamous movement came in March of 1965, actually March 7th of 1965, and that was called Bloody Sunday. And this was when Lewis led over 600 peaceful protesters across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma, Alabama. What met them was a wall of state troopers who charged them with batons and tear gas. Lewis suffered a skull fracture that day. As he lay beaten on the pavement, the world saw the brutal face of racism, and Lewis became a living symbol of the nonviolent resistance. But this story did not end in the protest. It evolved into policy, purpose, and legacy. He went on to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives for over 3 decades. That is 30 years, you guys, carrying the same principles of courage and moral, the courage and moral clarity into the Congress. Despite being surrounded by political games and systematic interior, he never lost the fire of freedom of a freedom fighter. He never lost the fire of a freedom fighter. All of these F's. He never lost the fire of a freedom fighter. He called it getting into good trouble, necessary trouble for justice. Through trauma, humiliation, and unimaginable resistance, John Lewis remained steadfast in his belief that America could be better, and that he had a sacred obligation to fight for that vision, no matter the cost. I'm just so thankful, because I'm so thankful for this man, because John Lewis did not just survive the trauma of racial terrorism. He survived the trauma of racial terrorism. He made it his life's mission to dismantle the very system that created this. He took the beatings. He took going to jail. He took the hatred and forged them into tools for liberation. He didn't become bitter. He became a beacon. Where others saw fear, he planted hope. Where the world tried to erase him, he wrote his name in the arc of justice. John Lewis taught us that trauma is not weakness. It is a wound that can be led to purpose. Whew, that's a lot, you guys. His story is a blueprint for moral courage, reminding us that silence in the face of injustice is complicity. His footsteps across that bridge in Selma didn't just lead to voting rights. They led to a generation of Black leaders, organizers, and everyday people who believe in a better world because he showed them it was possible to fight and win. He didn't just endure injustice, he transformed it into legacy. So thank you, Mr. John Lewis, for your fire, your pain, and your unshakable commitment to justice. You showed us what survival in action looks like. You paved the way for so many of us to speak, to act, and to rise. So if today's story brought up pain, know that it's okay to feel it. That pain deserves your compassion, not your silence. If it reminded you of your own experiences with mistreatment, know this: you are not alone and you are not invisible. Share this episode, comment your thoughts, or tag someone who needs this message. Let's keep creating a space for voices that were once silenced. Please like, share, and subscribe to Empowered Voices, Finding Strength in Survivors, to continue to hear messages that uplift and inspire. And remember what I'm going to say, you guys, what I'm going to say. Your story doesn't end in pain. It begins in power. See you guys tomorrow for day 14. I love you all. Stay strong.
Heard you looking for a hero. Well, look up. No more running from the bad guy. I'ma stare him in the eye like, what's up? I know the journey got hard for a minute, but I ain't giving this up. Yeah. Yeah, I got the heart of a champion. If I get knocked down, I get